Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is episode 12, season 5 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, and it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. Introducing the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask, signature CC Classic, finished with a secondary aging in Oloroso Sherry Cask. All the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club, with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. And there you are, Ray Ferraro. You are in Beantown, Boston. Looked like a real nice plate of chicken parm that you had last night out for dinner with Steve Levy, right, from ESPN.
Yeah, Steve Levy and our Emily Kaplan was there, and Ivan Solkowski was our stats guy. And
nice.
Now, Leaves is quite a character around the north end of Boston, apparently, and he was hugging people all over the place.
Wow.
It was like Norm from Cheers. And but it was awesome. Great place. The restaurant has on the one wall they've got like 6 TVs, and they have 6 mob movies playing.
Why wouldn't they? I mean, it's perfect motif in Boston.
Oh, so there was like Casino was on one, and Analyze This was on another, and then I look up one time and there's the horse head in the bed of The Godfather. I was like, oh, didn't really need to see that.
Classic.
Yeah. So there were 6 of them though. So it was really nice, really awesome, and it was a beautiful night. And this can be when the weather's like that, to walk around the harbor is pretty awesome place.
Now, what prompted the chicken parm? I've probably been out for dinner with you 100 times, maybe more. I've never seen you order it.
You know what? I was looking. There was a lot of good things, or a lot of things. You know when a menu just kind of grabs you, and you're like, I think so. Maybe how about this? And I was like, you know what? I think I haven't had it in a while. I need
for you.
I need a blast of chicken parm, and it was good.
I particularly liked. I'm not going to mention the account because I don't know who it was that chirped you. But isn't that just, again, the underbelly of social media? You're out there with your colleagues having a nice dinner. There's a lovely photo of Ray Ferraro and the chicken parm, and somebody chirps you about how you're holding your cutlery.
Okay, but see, you know, I'll tell you why I like that.
Okay.
Because when I read that, it was obvious the guy's just fooling around.
Right.
Like there's nothing malicious or vile or, cutting about it. And so, he didn't like the way I was holding the knife and the fork. And I said, okay, I'll come to utensil school in the summer. And I like that. I think it's fun. I think it's funny. I mean, I guess he didn't I guess he thought I held it like an 8-year-old or something. I don't know. Well, I just want to get it in my mouth, man. I don't care.
I understand, but honestly, I'm zoomed in. I'm cropping the picture, and I'm like, I don't know. It looks fine to me. I don't have any issue with this. Like, what are we looking? Somebody's coming to your house for dinner, and they're worried about how the cutlery is placed on your table.
Well, just think though, Dregs. But just think, they're probably. That makes me think, if I ever have this guy to the house, that he's going to go, oh, look at that, water spots on their forks. Their dishwasher isn't working very well.
Your dessert fork is on the wrong side, Mr. Ferraro.
By the way, quick, totally off topic.
Okay.
People should be aware you're working today with a little bit of a physical ailment here.
I am. Can you tell? I wonder if people on YouTube will be able to tell.
You're a little off center here. What is it like? What were you lifting weights yesterday?
No, not that.
Although I moving boxes in the garage.
Hold on, I carried the weight of the network TSN on my back yesterday with the Pierre Dorian news and everything going on.
But so what? Where did the shoulder injury come from?
Sleeping. I honestly, I can't.
Quite an athlete.
Yeah, I wish there was more to it. Yeah, I mean, have you never done that? I woke up this morning. I'm not a great sleeper anyway. I toss and turn. I'm kind of all over the place. I woke up and I go to get out of bed, and I'm like, look at it. Like I can. That's as far as I can turn my head to the right.
You're going to need some help.
I'm going to need some help.
I will say I have one to match. I was playing still. I was with the Islanders, and getting ready to go to practice. I'm brushing my teeth. I reach into the sink to get a drink of water, and my back just went locked up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't move. I got to get to the rink. So I drove kind of like Ace Ventura with his head sticking out the window.
Yeah.
I was bent the other way. So I was driving. I walk in and the trainer's like, "What happened to you?" I go, "I was brushing my teeth."
Oh,
He's like, of course, right away, he's like,
how many
wow,
games did you miss?
None. They work on it. But he goes, wow, you got
shot.
He goes, Dregs, but he goes, oh, I tell him I'm brushing my teeth. He goes, wow, you got big teeth. So yeah, I do. Thanks, pal.
All right. We're going to dive into our Tim Hortons headlines. While I read the tag, why don't you just give yourself an inch more headroom there?
Okay. Thanks, Dregs. Appreciate that.
Well, I don't want to stop the pod and get Zuby to correct it.
I don't even really know how to do it. Oh, I think, how's that?
There you go. Yeah,
Producer Drager. Is that good?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
They have trouble with your headroom, though.
Is there? No, my headroom's
well, no, because that's a big head. But
yeah, okay. Ray, you know this, but Tim's NHL trading cards are back with the all-new set, so get ready to unpack the thrill and score your favorite hockey stars today. Grab them before they're gone. They're available now, only at Tim's, and I'm proud to say I've got 30 unopened packs from Tim Hortons, which I have purchased with my own money.
Now, what are you going to do with them? You got to start putting them in the book.
I know. I feel though that's a father-son thing or a father-daughter thing, right? I'm not going to enjoy opening the packages as much as Mason Dreger will enjoy opening the packages. So I'm just going to leave them. I'm going to set them aside.
Okay, that's a really good point. Do you ever play the Pakudu game?
No.
Oh, on Twitter, you go through and they match up. You don't ever play that?
No, I've seen it. I don't.
You should do it. It's really fun. It's kind of fun. Anyway, when I get to put Landon's name in, I don't know why it entertains me so much. And I'm like, oh, look at this. Nobody will know, and it's because you get a low score and all. I don't know. It's the same thing. Mason opens the card, he puts it in, and you're like, oh, that was way more fun than I did it.
Well, especially the older cards, right? None of them are going to be. Well, they'll be vintage because of the player.
What's vintage?
Card, but beyond that, I think Gordie Howe, something like that.
Oh, good. So that's still vintage. I thought you were going to say, guys,
Ray Ferraro rookie card.
Yeah, beat it.
All right. Okay, headlines. Here we go. Pierre Dorion, the Senators agree to part ways, and I thought it was interesting that Michael Andlauer and Steve Staios made that clear. Right? It wasn't that Dorion had been relieved of his duties. It was a mutual parting the ways in the final year of his contract. Doesn't really matter how it came to be. But we essentially know, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But Steve Staios, who we know well, Ray, is the interim general manager. And people are going to wonder, they're asking us automatically, all right, well, is Staios going to become the full-time general manager in time? He acknowledged that they will go through a process and they'll look at their options. And, that option might range from Peter Chiarelli to Matthew Darch, who, may have some history back in Montreal with Michael Andlauer. But I'm asking you, as a guy who knows Staios well, given his history, bit of time in Edmonton, working with Kenny Holland and that group, building the franchise the way he did the Hamilton Bulldogs in the Ontario Hockey League, is that enough for Steve Staios to be a qualified NHL GM?
Well, before there's a real answer here, I would say everything Steve does is really methodical and well thought out. That's just the way, ever since I've known Steve, that's how I would characterize him. He just he thinks through things. So to jump in and be the general manager, maybe that's not in their grand plan. Because again, we found out about the sanctions and Dorion's firing yesterday.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Right.
Yeah. There's been, it was reported there was about a week where they were
they've known for a while.
Discussing the penalties and such. And the reason I bring that up is, what if the plan, why can't the owner be the president of the team as well? What if the structure is a little different than it's been in some other places? And the reason I say the idea came to me as I watched Michael Andlauer speak yesterday. And I was like, you don't normally hear that. Why? Maybe their vision of management looks a little different. Maybe as the interim GM, they can work through that they were working through anyway.
Yeah.
And maybe they come up with a a different top-down structure. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just would be different. I don't know. I think Steve is really smart. I really do. And I see him as a general manager, but maybe there's a bigger part of the pie that needs to be sorted out still.
That was an impressive media availability. It was on all fronts. I thought the right questions were asked, no doubt about that. I thought that Andlauer was very direct, kind of straddled that line of being critical of the National Hockey League, but also respectful in all of that too, right? But a huge penalty, which also speaks to why it took so long for the league to make the announcement. I would say that Pierre Dorion and then by extension Staios and Andlauer knew for a while that they were going to have to forfeit a first-round draft pick in one of the next 3 years, 24, 25, or 2026, because of the Dadonov debacle. And I'm sure they were fighting with the league, right? Trying to negotiate. It can't be a first-round pick. Like, it can't, that's too punitive. So what do you think? Is it too punitive, or given what happened whereby the NHL approved the deal sending Dadonov from Vegas to Anaheim based on the information Ottawa management provided that there was no trade protection? So that was the information that the league and the teams involved worked with, and then they found out with proof that no, there's limited trade protection here. He's not going to Anaheim. End of story. So they had to avoid it. It was a bad look on the league, but They worked with the information that they had. So,
okay, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt you for a minute.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me, none, that the trade protection or the no trade clauses are not a league-wide knowledge. Like, why is that not attached on an addendum to the contract? That makes no sense whatsoever. So if Ottawa misled Vegas, which appears to be the whole crux of this matter, then it should be a punitive result.
Yeah.
However, Vegas shouldn't have to ask. Vegas should already know. They should be able to click on their internal server, which is not the internet version that we see, that the folks at Cap Friendly do their thing and do an amazing job. There should be an internal system that each team can see. So, like, why am I going to call Chicago about Darren Drager? Because I want to acquire you, and then I could look on, like, why waste the time? Why wouldn't I just click on your name, see the 10-team no trade? Oh, I'm on it. So I don't even go any further. So I think that's the first step of this. The second thing, Vegas was embarrassed and ridiculed, really, for trying to trade the Dadonov. It came across as they tried to make this deal and force him into Anaheim, which clearly was not the case as a result of this 73-page investigation. So it was embarrassing to Vegas, and I'm sure they feel, and rightly should, feel vindicated by it.
Right.
The first round pick in one of 3 years, my first thought was, I wonder if they can appeal that. I wonder if sometime in the next 6 months, they can appeal this and say, is there any way this could be a second round pick?
Right.
Like, I don't know, but it got me to wondering. The third part of it is, why did it take so long?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because I thought Andlauer's comment, while, they acknowledged that it was Ottawa's wrongdoing, but he said, why is this my problem?
Yeah.
And I don't know, but those were some of the things that popped into my head when I was reading and watching.
I'm with you. The only thing I would say to that is Andlauer knew before taking over ownership of the Ottawa Senators that this investigation was happening. And if the conclusion was what it ended up being, that it would be a significant form of discipline. He knew that before taking over the Ottawa Senators. But why it took so long, I mean, that's an excellent question, and nobody seems to want to answer it from the National Hockey League. But in the end of the day, it's the Ottawa Senators who are served up a you-know-what sandwich over all of this. It's been a tough few weeks for the Sens, hasn't it? Wow.
Yeah, it really has. I do, I was on Overdrive the other day or yesterday, and we were talking about it, and I said it's like they're ankle deep in mud in Ottawa, but they're about ready to step out of it.
Right. Yeah.
Like I really do believe, like, and I don't think, I'm certainly not in the minority of this, but I believe like there is really good days ahead.
Yeah.
In Ottawa, and teams or management groups. I mean, we don't see ownership change too much, but management groups often get left with trailing junk from the previous administration
all the time. Yeah.
And that's going to happen to everybody that's a manager now. When they get fired, they're going to leave trailing junk, whether it's a overpaid contract, a too long contract, whatever it is. And that always has to get dealt with. And it's always something they've got to step around. I'm sure when Andlauer and Staios took over, they weren't thinking that they were, got these two things to get bonked on the head with right away.
I want to talk about, a push for mandatory neck guards around the hockey world in just a minute, but we're talking about Ottawa, so I want to touch on a couple of other Canadian teams before we push off from that. The Calgary Flames lose their sixth straight. They feel good about themselves, though, right? They played better. They do? Well, that's what I read post-game, yeah. They feel that they were more engaged. Everybody was pulling on the rope together, Ray. They didn't get the result, but they feel pretty good about themselves. Tongue-in-cheek and being a smartass, I get it. I don't know if you watched or not. Insider Trading on Tuesday, I mentioned the fact that Noah Hannafin has pulled his extension off the table, and they were real close. I don't know what the term or the money was for Noah Hannafin. I mean, he's a good defenseman, so it would be up there. We can appreciate that. He says, you know what? I need more time to let things sort themselves out before I commit long term. I mean, I don't think he's being vilified for that. That's his right. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. Maybe that's why Lindholm hasn't really engaged in negotiations with the Flames. So what's your take on that? And how long before Calgary goes, okay, fair enough, but if we creep into the new year and we're still, we're a non-playoff factor, we're moving you, plain and simple. We can't leave these two good assets and not get anything back for them.
Well, when you mention that, first guy I think of is Seth Jones.
Yeah.
Seth Jones went to Chicago, signed a 8-year extension for a bucket of money.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, plans have changed. We are now going right down beyond the foundation. We are going to buy a new plot of land and start again. And right now we're at the engineer's drawings. And, oh, by the way, you've still got 7 years left.
Eesh.
So if I'm Lindholm and I'm Hannafin, I do want to wait just to make sure that I'm not signing away the prime years of my career to a rebuild. And here's the difference of Hannafin and Lindholm as opposed to some other players is they have leverage because they are both very good players.
Yeah.
And if Craig Conroy, who when he took over, he was asked about the Johnny Gaudreau scenario where he went to free agency and left. He talked about his feelings when that happened, about when he closed the door in his office and went, we just lost Johnny Gaudreau. That's not happening with these two players.
No.
And the other part to this, the last part is if Conroy and the Flames decide, look, we can't, when they're talking to the players, we can't get this deal done. They could trade those guys in 2 days.
Yeah.
Because of the players they are. If he puts Elias Lindholm on the trade market, how many teams are lined up out the door for him? Noah Hannafin's a top 4 defenseman in the prime of his career.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to have the offense that people thought he was going to have, but my gosh, the guy is big and he skates. And do you ever see teams going, geez, we could use another defenseman?
Yeah.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really tenuous place, I feel like, in Calgary, because they're going to have to decide, and they don't have to decide today, but they're going to have to decide pretty soon. Are we a team fighting for a playoff spot, or do we need to step back a bit and start to acquire some assets? It was, Connor Zary had a really nice day last night for the Flames, and maybe they might think, you know what, we got to get some of these young guys in and see what we are.
Yeah. We've got ESPN's Kevin Weeks joining us on the podcast this week. A real quick thought on the Vancouver Canucks. Are we making too much out of the fact that Rick Tocchet sat JT Miller in the second period the other night for 4 minutes and change? It's, you didn't bench him for the third period, but that seemed to overshadow, Patterson's hat trick and how well the Canucks generally play. So quick thought.
You mean something could be overshadowed in Vancouver? Come on, get out of town. It's only a big deal if he pouted and didn't play at the end of the game. And, like that would be the big deal. I'll tell you, there's not much bend with Rick Tocchet.
No.
And it's basically, here is what I expect and need. This is what our team expects and needs. And that's it.
Yeah.
And if, JT, I see a lot of myself in JT Miller. I'm certainly not the size or anything like that, but like the hot-headedness.
Yeah.
Oh man, I lived it. And when you're doing it, you just can't stop.
Right.
You just can't stop. And so obviously Tocchet and Miller have had enough conversations to know when that time is. And Miller's probably thinking, okay, I've turned the puck over. I've taken a bad penalty. I've got to stop, but he can't.
Right.
So you get put in the cooler for a few minutes. And so I don't think I don't think it's going to happen a lot because it's embarrassing and nobody likes it. So maybe he can recognize that point earlier. But I'm telling you, when you're that guy, it's not that easy to shut it off.
Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly told me this morning, Ray, that there legitimately is a surge now for mandatory net guards around the hockey world. Whether or not it ever finds its way to the NHL, that's going to take some time. And of course, it's all in the wake of Adam Johnson's death. Wayne Gretzky weighed in with his thoughts on TNT. Have a listen.
He'd come in, he'd be out on the ice without a visor on. I'd say, what are you doing? And he'd say, well, I want to make this team. No. You grew up your whole life with a visor on. Keep your visor on. And so here we are now. All these kids grow up, especially in Canada, wearing the neck guards. Why take it off? Keep the neck guards on. And I'm sure the Players Association and the Commissioner's Office, they're going to grandfather this in. And eventually we're going to see all kids coming into the league wearing neck guards to protect themselves.
The difference for me there, Ray, and good on Wayne for speaking out on the platform that he has, because it's just common sense. But you talked on Tuesday about, you just felt comfortable with a visor and it was common sense to you back then. But when visors became mandatory, there were lots of players in the league already using them, right? So it wasn't that big of an adoption. There are zero players, unless it's happened in the last night or two, in the NHL wearing neck guards. So how do you go from 0 to 100%, even though it makes a lot of sense to do it?
Well, first of all, Wayne's got an incredible point, as he often does, right? And it's like you wear it your whole life, and then you get to the National Hockey League and you take it off.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't make a lot of sense. I scored 400 goals looking through a window. You can see. Like even the players that complained about it and then eventually had to use them, you can see.
Yeah.
If you don't wear a neck guard and you are aware of the horrible death of Adam Johnson this week, what would stop you from at least trying it? and then for the league and the players to go the next step further to mandate it, I think if the protection is there, you should wear it. Here's the thing. Some guys won't want to wear it. Oh, it doesn't happen. I don't care if it happens once in a billion games. I don't want to wear it. It's not going to happen to me. There's always that thought. There's always the players that will think, I just don't want to wear it. But if the neck protection is not comfortable, if it's, I don't know, it doesn't look great.
Yeah.
Make new stuff. Like they can,
Yes.
and they will. And so I don't see this any different than the visors. I really don't. There was a time when nobody wanted to wear them, where, like, I know because I was one of very few wearing it in the Western Hockey League.
Yeah. And
yeah, you got to listen to a lot of shit, but like, I was like, okay, look, I could get new teeth, but I could never get new eyes. The sticks were always around my face. The way I skated, I was low to the ice, and I'm short. So I wanted to wear it. And so what? But if somebody came out tomorrow wearing a neck guard, do you think somebody's going to, like, if that was your thing, oh, I'm going to get bugged or teased, nobody's going to think of that.
No.
I don't see it. I don't see how this does not become a mandated item moving forward. It would almost be like, at some point, the goalies must have looked, the goalies that were wearing masks must have looked at the other guys and said, what are they doing? and then they went on their business. There'll always be guys that'll resist, but like there's still guys not wearing visors.
Right.
I think, unlike, say, like Wayne said, you got to go back to the grassroots and come up that way. I think this issue or this item, if it went the other way, Dregs, if it went from the top down, it's finished.
Yeah.
Everybody will wear them because they'll have to. And I personally I think it's the right way to go.
Those are your headlines. Thank you, Tim Hortons.
Tim's NHL trading cards are back. Unpack the thrill. Score your favorite icons with an all-new set. Get yours before they're gone. Only at Tim's.
Our interviews on Ray and Dregs this season brought to us by Canadian Club Whiskey. We're introducing the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask. All right, pleased to be joined on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast by Kevin Weeks of ESPN, of TSN, of the NHL Network. I mean, is there 6 other employment opportunities, Weeksy, we should throw out there? Am I missing anything at this stage?
That's so wrong. That's so wrong. But you know what? It's so wrong that it's right.
Yeah, you forgot also add Pitchman too, because he's doing that too. Every time I turn on the TV, it's Weeksy in a different suit or the top half of his head or something. Right?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I learned from the best, man. I noticed a long time ago, you guys are always on. So I realized that early.
Okay, but Ray brings that point up and explain it to those who are familiar with you on social media, right? I mean, you delve into the realm of being a hockey insider. You've broke your share of news over the years. Why, just the eyes in the bottom of the video? What happened? How did that come about?
So somebody said yesterday, I saw a fan had a meme yesterday, and it was literally the hippo on the surface of the water, and only the 2 eyes were up above the water. So basically what happened was, okay, so as you know way better than me, you've been doing that way longer than I have. You get news, you try your best to verify it as quickly as possible. You want it to be accurate, you want it to be factual, you go ahead and you post it. But what happened was when I started doing it, I realized what you guys knew a long time ago, that news doesn't always happen in a way that's convenient for you. So, Dred, I'm sure you must have had so many times where you're going to minor hockey, you're bringing your kid, and all of a sudden you probably say to him, okay, 1 second. Or you probably have to say to your wife, you're at dinner, okay, 1 second, I'll be back.
Yeah.
So it initially started that way, and I realized, I'm like, oh my God, is that what these guys have to do all the time? Like at any time of day, any time of night?
Yep.
And then it went from that to okay, no cameraman. You guys know I'm terrible technically already. We already established that pre-show. So a couple of them, I had the phone up, and my wife's like, "Oh my God, like really?" Because you could see my forehead, the shot's terrible, the whole thing. So then people started, like, they were all over me for it. They're like, "Wait, what are you doing? Can't you do a proper video? Like, what are you doing?" And then from there, it just became kind of a little bit funny, and I kind of ran with that part of it. But that's how it happened, because literally I botched the first few times trying to do it.
It's
And
funny where
the
the inspiration comes from. Who knows, man? But
oh my God.
I see that video and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Weeksy.
Yeah, you know where it's coming from, for sure.
The boys started chirping me too. Like I had so many people chirping me. You know how the guys are. They're unrelenting in chirping, right? So it's like, what Weeksy, what are you doing? Like, don't you know how to work a phone? Like, so then it really became really funny. So yeah, it's been hilarious. It's been hilarious.
Now, how did you like when you were playing? Did you think like? I mean, you're a great talker, and you know we like the camera, and we like the interaction and stuff. Obviously, we're comfortable, but like, did you know you were going to get into this? Did you think of this? I never did. It just kind of I fell into it kind of. But did you think of it?
I thought of it. Yes, yeah, I thought of it. I think I've always been like a really serious hockey and sports junkie, like a real one. So I was always watching since I was young. Like I'd watch anything, read everything, read every hockey news, read the box scores in the Sun and Toronto Star, and we go to tournaments, read the programs, read the paper. So I was always really into that. And then when I got to junior, what happened was too, you know how it is, you got to go and do your volunteer work, your community work. And a lot of the boys, especially your 16, 17, a lot of guys are like, I'm not going. And I would always kind of volunteer to go, and it was natural. That part of it was natural. And then when I got to playing, it's the same thing. Like I would be hyper consumed. I'd watch games all the time. Okay, I'm watching your panel. I'm watching this. I'm watching that. And what ended up happening was, I think it was during 04-05, during our stoppage, I did a couple things for the Score back home. And from there, it was kind of on my radar, but not in a way that was calculated. It was just something that was kind of an afterthought. And you think you're going to play forever. We all do.
Oh yeah.
And next thing you know, it turned out to be my last season here in Jersey. Right before the playoffs, I sprained my MCL. I had a grade 2 sprain. And once we were eliminated, I couldn't come back in time. We had this other guy by the name of Marty Brodeur. He's pretty good. And I didn't return the lineup. Yeah, he's okay. And basically what happened was I said to my agent, I'm like, hey, man, I'd love to go on somewhere and just continue doing whatever. He goes, yeah, no problem. So we called the NHL network at the time at TSN. And Mark Jacobson was kind enough to take the call. And he said, yeah, if you want to come on. And here's the best part, which you guys would know. So he goes, this is only a 1 hour show. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, it's only 1 hour. I'm like, okay. And it was the playoffs, as you guys know.
All right.
So I'm like, 1 hour? It's like right up the road. It's right by my parents' house. It's right up the 401 from my house. No problem. I'll be there. So I get there. It's like 7, whatever. Don't end up leaving until whatever, 2 a.m. I'm like, oh, really? Oh,
the show's 1 hour. But
exactly. So that was kind of a welcome to like official TV. And then that off season, you know how it is. You get older and your agent tells you have offers and things are going to happen and things don't pan out. And then the TV calls just started flooding in. And I kind of listened to some elders and some people, and literally we were in Barbados visiting family on the beach. And once these TV offers kind of presented themselves, they seemed to be more intriguing than the playing offers, and certainly more intriguing for me at that time than going to Russia. I said, let's go. I'm all in. I want to do this TV and I want to learn. I want to watch all the people that are great, learn from them, and try to be as good as possible, as quickly as possible.
Weeksy, let's kind of delve into some of the goaltending around the National Hockey League. And you know what, it's so early, it's hard to categorize or grade anyone. And, the usual suspects like Ullmark in Boston go down the list. No surprise, right? That they're as good as they are right out of the gate. But I'm looking at the list, and if you look at the stats and you identify the 10 guys who are right out of the gate, you've got Jonathan Quick at the top of the list. Granted, he's only played 3 games, so let's pump the brakes there. But then it goes Swayman, Reimer, Ullmark, Wool, Demko, Ottinger, Hill, Thompson, and Georgiev.
Yeah.
Are the names obvious that surprise you as I read that list, who probably aren't going to be on that list in 10 games from now?
Yeah, it's wild, guys. It is so wild. And what's crazy is there's been this major swing, right? There's been this major swing at the position because many of us and many of the listeners, certainly in and around our age, would have known a time where I just mentioned Marty, where we had so many of these icons that were playing or next to icons, right? So you would have had obviously Patrick Waugh, Hasek, Marty, Fuhr, Nikolai Habibulin. You know, I can kind of go down the list, right, of these goalies.
Yeah.
And then you had Ryan Miller and all the other guys that came in our era, like just under them. And now it's just like it's certain on any game, on any night, it could be anybody. I think perhaps of the list, the biggest surprise, but not because I think he's a future Hall of Famer and he knows I'm a huge backer of his, is Quickie, Jonathan Quick. I think Quickie, and I know from speaking to him, he's always been a Ranger fan. Mike Richter's been his guy. He's from just up the road in Connecticut. This is a childhood dream for him. Imagine everything he's accomplished, and this is a childhood dream for him. But certainly, just watching him play, especially with his style of game and his athleticism, and not being behind LA's defense, although the Rangers have a good defense, I didn't see this coming for him to be this sharp this early. And to your point, I know it's a 3-game sample size, but the game against Edmonton, he was good. The game against Seattle, he was good. The Rangers are playing much better defensively. So I'd probably say Quickie if I had to say a name, even though he's a Hall of Fame lock for me. But I'd probably say Quickie. I'd say Jonathan Quick.
Okay, so Kevin, if you don't have Igor Shesterkin or Ilya Sorokin or you know the very best in the game, you know Vasilevsky who's out, what's the difference from the number 11 goalie to the number 25 goalie? And if that's the case, like why would you spend way too much money on a guy that's number 12, or you could spend way less on a guy that's number 20, and they're kind of the same? Like, why would you? Is that change? Like, did Vegas change the code last year, winning with Hill, and now they got Hill and Thompson, and man, they're fine in goal because of the way they play.
Yeah.
But like, does that change?
Yeah, it's so interesting because the position, the demands are the same, even if you have the Brick Tournament in Edmonton or the Kamloops Bantam Tournament. Like the demands of the position are the same. But what's crazy is every individual team goaltending situation is unique. So Vegas is so unique. They're unicorns in every way to their credit, by the way. They went through 5 in their inaugural year, got to the Cup final. They went through 5 again last year, won the Cup final. And then in that, you had Aiden Hill that came on. He was out of his mind. He was awesome. Logan Thompson was great for the first part of the season, all-star. He gets injured. You had Brossois who came in. He was unbelievable. Patera, the young Czech kid, came up, played a few games. He looked good. Yeah. So their situation is like, I always say this. Could you imagine? I know football is always different, but I always say that for the CFL fans back home, the NFL fans here. Could you imagine in a 16-game, 18, 17-game football season, you have 5 different quarterbacks that play? Like, seriously, and then go on to win the Grey Cup or to win the Super Bowl? Yeah. Like, that'd be unheard of. So now to answer your other question about the difference from 11, the kind of the number 11 goalie on, there's some goalies that are within that category that have the ability to become a number 1. They have the talent. They have the physical skill set. They might even have the right attitude to do it. One of the differences that I found is doing that every night. Right. Playing to that standard, that level every night.
But Weeksy, so that's part of my point. So now you don't have to play to that standard every night because you haven't spent too much money on them, and you could have another guy that might be kind of in that range too. Is correct. Like I looked at Hellebuck and thought that. Yeah. Like his money got squeezed. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of on this, whether it might be a goofy theory, but it's what I think anyway.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So is that possible? Like, can you have a guy that doesn't have to do it every night?
It depends on your team. I don't think, like for me, if I look at the way teams are built, I look at the Devils, for example, especially us being in and around this area. So I've been the young goalie before. I know what it is to be the young goalie, to want more, to want to try to cement yourself, to play more games, to get in a situation where you can play more. Vanacek and, of course, and Akira Schmidt, they have that opportunity. They're getting that opportunity on what's now becoming a good team. Now hold it. But at the same time, fellas, Hellebuck to me would have been the piece for them. In fact, I think Hellebuck could have been the piece even more so than Timo Meier, because I think Hellebuck is more of what they need, or they may need going forward, than Timo Meier is. I think Timo Meier is more of a want. I think he's more of a want for them than a need. So there's an example. So he ends up getting the 8 sheets, to your point, Razor, to stay in Winnipeg. He ends up getting the 8 sheets. But to come here, Fitzy, Tom Fitzgerald is probably, I don't know, our cap situation, we're going to have to resign Jesper Bratt. We're going to have to resign so-and-so. I want to sign Timo Meier, so then they don't spend as much at the goal position. So that's why I say it's all kind of situation. It's situation specific, and each team is kind of different that way.
So speaking of situations, I want your opinion. I'm going to touch on this on Insider Trading on TSN tonight, but we know historically that the 3 goalie routine is a tough one.
It is.
So
I can tell you guys.
And I'm looking at the Montreal Canadiens with Jake Allen, Montembeault, and Caden Primo trying to make his way in the National Hockey League. Tell us how difficult that is to have 3 goalies fighting for that crease, even in practice, and how quickly do the Montreal Canadiens need to remedy that situation?
Funny, Greg, we're on the same sheet of music, because I've been saying that too. Like, okay, so first of all, for the listener, when you have 3, first problem is when you have 3. I've been the 3 as a young guy, just trying to get on the ice at the end of practice as the 3.
Yeah.
I've been on the ice as 3 at different points in my career as a guy that played quite a bit, and then I've been the 2, and I've been the 1 in that situation. And in any one of those situations, it's never easy. It always becomes awkward. The best thing you can do is still be a good teammate, still be supportive of the other 2 guys, no matter where they fall on that pecking order. But you're trying to get your reps in practice too. You have to be respectful and know where you are in that 3 pecking order when you can actually come in the net. The 1 guy's not coming out of the net; he's still taking his reps. So then it comes down to the 2 guy to be able to say, "Hey, listen, all right, I've had whatever, let's say 40 shots. Go ahead, man, to the 3. You can get in there." And every team runs it differently, because sometimes you have that, and you have the coaches, or namely the head coach or the GM, that might not even communicate with you properly. So everybody's kind of like looking around, feeling nervous. Your teammates are looking around, feeling nervous. They don't want to say the wrong thing. It's very awkward. In Montreal situation, I'm with you. I would love to see Caden get an opportunity somewhere where he can get some consistent games. I loved him since he was at Northeastern. I played with Wayne. I've known Keith since his dad since I was young. And I remember Keith saying, "My son Caden's playing that." I'm like, "What?" And here he is. And here he is, right? So I'd love to see Caden get that opportunity somewhere where it's a little more unobstructed and he has a little more reign to play NHL games, to learn the league. Because it's tough when you're the 3 guy and you're playing 1 of every 7, 8 games. You put all that pressure on yourself. You're like, "I got to deliver. This is my chance. I got to deliver." And you guys know, if you're playing net this way, you don't have this now.
Yeah.
You just feel so restricted. There's so much pressure on yourself. So it's a difficult situation for a lot of viewers. It's very difficult to be in a 3 goalie platoon. It's tough.
So the problem really becomes where the Canadians are in their rebuild. Is it might make on a quick glance sense to say, "Oh yeah, we got to move Primo," but really it might be that you have to move Jake Allen.
100%.
And so
100%.
like it's never as easy as it seems, right? Like it always looks like, oh, you should just do this. But so if you're sitting in the chair, like Kent Hughes is, you have to decide what's the more valuable path to take, because it's not as clear maybe as it might appear.
And what do you want? Where do you want your team to actually be? Do you want to be in a rebuild? Are you committed to it? A. Are you now in a retool? Is that what you're committed to? Question mark. B. Or are you a contender?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. The Montreal Canadiens, with my man Marty St. Louis at the helm, they're playing better than anybody would have expected.
Right.
They are. They're playing better than anybody would have expected. You go in and play the defending Cup champs after playing really well. Now you go cross country, cross continent, go to Vegas. They get in there. They push Vegas to shootout. Right?
Right.
Like who would have thought?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. If it was me, I would have traded Jake Allen, not for anything on Jake Allen, because I think he's a very valuable piece that can still kick, and he is a great guy in the room. Guys really love him. He's highly respected. He's very supportive. And in fact, if it was me, I would have had him in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I would have sent him to Buffalo. I think Buffalo would have been a nice fit for him, simply because then he's there to mentor and still perform when called upon, and still give you NHL caliber goaltending whenever he's in the net. He's going to give you the professionalism. He could then complement Levi and or UPL. But I think Buffalo would have been a good landing spot. Not limited to, but I think Buffalo would have been a good landing spot for him.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at there, Weeksy. I mean, this has been awesome. For me to be surrounded by two ESPN greats, Ray Ferraro and Kevin Weeks, in episode 12 of the podcast, man, it doesn't get better. Keep doing what you do, man. Thanks for joining us, and
thanks, fellas.
have a great week.
Thanks for having me on, boys. I don't know whose arm I had to twist to get on here, but thanks for having me on, boys.
Busy podcast. So we're going to push Ask Ray and Dregs Anything to next week in episode 13 of the Ray and Dregs podcast. But if you have a question, send it to us on our socials at Ray and Dregs or on the website rayanddregs.com. In Boston tonight for the big match, and then back home. What's going on?
Yep,
in your world,
absolutely.
Ray?
Back home Friday. So the Bruins today are playing the Maple Leafs from Toronto.
Yes.
Boston doesn't have their top pair. Charlie McAvoy's serving game 1 of 4. Matt Grzelcyk is on long-term injury. He's out about 3 weeks. They called up 3 American League defensemen. Danton Heinen, who's been on a PTO, is going to be in the lineup for his second game tonight. And they've got a teenage centerman playing his 10th game. Matt Patra is playing. So if the Leafs, that was a snoozer of all snoozers last game.
Yeah.
But if they're looking for a rebound game, it always means something, Toronto, Boston.
Yeah.
And now you've got the Bruins are vulnerable, even though they haven't lost a game yet this year.
Yeah.
I mean, now's a chance to jump. By the way, I do have to say one thing to our good friends, Chris Edwards and Franklin Rubenstein, the producer and director at TSN that do all the Leaf games. They found it funny, Dregs, to put a box in the bench where I stand and say, if you're under 5'9", get on the box so we can see you on camera. This is not over. This is not over. Oh no. Now, maybe, just maybe, I had gotten into the truck a little earlier and taped their headsets together, and maybe I had taped across their control boards. But that's just a rumor. But this is not over. I will respond.
That is sensational. Wow. And the fact that it was made so public on social media, I mean, now we all can enjoy it, and you've explained what's going on behind the scenes. So this is going to be a long-standing back and forth. I like it.
Dregs, I will get in. We will do a game, and I will have a chance to retaliate. But here's the thing. The technical guys, like they win every time.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing I didn't tell you is they know I'm an idiot with anything setting up.
Tech, yes.
So they took my headset and they unplugged it and they put it on the floor because they knew that I wouldn't find it because I get flustered right away, and B, once I did find it, I wouldn't know how to plug it in.
Yeah, where do I plug this thing in?
So
in your ear hole.
And I had a live hit coming up, and so they were watching me on the camera and scramble around. So they had all kinds of fun with it. So the battle continues. Oh, you muted yourself, Dregs. You muted yourself.
I did mute myself. Great. Yeah.
You sounded great.
Clear my throat there. When I have to clear my throat, I mute myself so that you and our faithful listeners don't have to catch into it. All right, well, travel safe. And then bring
Will
us
do.
up to speed in the next episode of all the shenanigans going on with you and Eddie and Franklin. I look forward to it.
Yes, we'll get to it. Well, everybody have a great weekend, Dregs. Hope your family has a good one. And
Yeah.
man, November. Oh, don't forget to set your clocks back. I hate this time of year.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either.
Yeah, but don't
Snowed
forget.
here the other day.
It did?
Yeah.
Oh, thumbs down. Boo.
I was tearing up. The snow was falling.
Oh,
Both
but you
games
got
done.
your snowblower all fired up.
I haven't yet, but that's on the agenda this weekend. That's what I'm doing this weekend, is figuring out the snowblower. So I put it to bed the right way.
Yeah.
You know, I did last winter. So I think it's in good
Dregs,
shape.
I think I got your weekend planned.
Oh, yeah?
So why not get your smoker going? And you can pretend that you've got something really technical going on when you throw the meat in there for 7 hours, and then go figure out the snowblower and come back, and I think this is your weekend.
Okay, perfect. It sounds like it. I'm actually going to do that just because, and I'll take the pictures and I'll send them to you just so you can see what's going on.
And maybe you could sit in that great chair again.
I will, for sure. Thank you to our sponsors, Ray, who continue to support us on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. Our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and Tim Hortons. And as always, thanks to you for rating, for listening, for sharing, and of course, following us on the Rain Dregs YouTube channel. Until next time, have a great and safe weekend, everyone.